A single aircraft worth more than $100 million lands at an American base somewhere in the Middle East. The pilot is alive, the jet is damaged, and for the first time since the United States and Israel launched their war on Iran 3 weeks ago, a question that military planners had treated as mostly theoretical has become painfully concrete. Can Iranian air defenses actually hit the most advanced stealth fighter ever built? On March 19, 2026, according to multiple sources cited by CNN, Al Jazeera, and Air and Space Forces magazine, the answer appears to be yes. The F-35 Lightning II, the crown jewel of American air power, designed precisely to survive in environments like this one, was struck during a combat mission over Iranian territory. The aircraft limped home, but the damage extends far beyond one fuselage. It reaches into the heart of the strategic narrative that Washington and Jerusalem have built around this conflict, a narrative of overwhelming, nearly unopposed dominance of Iranian skies. On the morning of March 19th, a United States Air Force F-35A fighter jet was forced to conduct an emergency landing at an American air base in the Middle East after sustaining damage while flying a combat mission over Iran. Captain Tim Hawkins, a spokesperson for U.S. Central Command, confirmed to multiple outlets that the aircraft had been on an active mission when the incident occurred. According to Hawkins, the aircraft landed safely and the pilot was reported in stable condition. The cause of the damage, he added, remains under investigation. The picture became more complex within hours. Two sources familiar with the matter told CNN that the jet was believed to have been struck by Iranian fire. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps moved quickly to claim credit, issuing a statement through state television asserting that its air defense systems had severely damaged the F-35 at approximately 2:50 in the morning local time over central Iranian airspace. The IRGC described the weapon used as an advanced next-generation air defense system operated by its aerospace force. A video was circulated online, purportedly showing the engagement through a forward-looking infrared system, though its authenticity could not be independently verified at the time of reporting. If the Iranian claim is confirmed, the incident would mark the first time any adversary has successfully struck a U.S. combat aircraft in this war, and the first verified case in history of an F-35 being hit by enemy fire. The timing is significant. It arrived on the same morning that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told reporters the United States was winning decisively and that Iranian air defenses had been, in his words, flattened. The gap between that assessment and the emergency landing of a $100 million stealth jet raises questions that neither a press briefing nor a Truth Social post can easily answer. The war that brought that F-35 over Iranian airspace began 3 weeks earlier, on February 28, 2026, when the United States and Israel launched a massive coordinated military campaign against Iran. The operation, codenamed Epic Fury by Washington and Roaring Lion by Israel, was the largest American military action in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Nearly 900 strikes were conducted in the first 12 hours alone, targeting Iranian leadership, air defenses, missile infrastructure, and nuclear-related facilities. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed in the opening salvo, along with dozens of senior Iranian officials. The road to that night was long and winding. Tensions between Washington and Tehran had escalated sharply throughout 2025, fueled by Iran's advancing nuclear program, regional proxy conflicts, and the brutal suppression of mass protests inside Iran in January 2026, which killed thousands. Intelligence assessments in February indicated Iran had produced enough weapons-grade uranium for 2 to 3 nuclear devices. Diplomatic efforts stuttered through 3 rounds of negotiations during February, with talks ultimately collapsing over the scope of any agreement, specifically whether Iran's ballistic missile programs and proxy networks would be included. According to reporting by the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, the decision to strike was shaped by intense lobbying from both Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and senior figures in Congress. President Trump announced the operation in an 8-minute video posted on Truth Social at 2 in the morning Eastern Time, without a formal congressional authorization or a public address. Iran responded with waves of retaliatory missile and drone strikes targeting Israel, U.S. military bases, and allied countries across the Gulf. Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain all came under fire. The Strait of Hormuz was effectively closed to commercial shipping, triggering what economists would describe as the worst energy supply disruption since the 1970s. What began as a concentrated strike against leadership and military capability rapidly widened into a sustained regional war. It is within this context, a campaign that American officials insist has degraded over 70% of Iran's missile launchers and driven its missile production to zero, that a single damaged F-35 suddenly carries enormous symbolic and strategic weight. The incident involves a constellation of actors whose interests are as layered as the air defense networks the F-35 was designed to defeat. For the United States, the F-35 is not merely an aircraft, it is the embodiment of a strategic doctrine built on technological supremacy. The entire F-35 program, encompassing 3 variants used by the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps, represents the most expensive weapons system in history, with lifetime costs projected to exceed $2 trillion through the 2070s. More than 1,300 aircraft have been delivered to 20 nations worldwide, according to Lockheed Martin. Its stealth design, advanced sensor fusion, and ability to operate as a networked information node are what justify that cost. A confirmed hit by Iranian air defenses does not make the aircraft obsolete, but it challenges the foundational assumption that 5th-generation stealth platforms can operate with near impunity against integrated air defense networks, even degraded ones. For Iran, the incident is a potent piece of strategic communication. The Islamic Republic has suffered devastating losses since February 28th. Its supreme leader killed, its air defenses battered, its navy largely destroyed, its nuclear infrastructure damaged, and thousands of military and civilian casualties. Yet Tehran's strategy has consistently relied on demonstrating that it can impose costs, that even in asymmetric defeat it can draw blood. The IRGC's rapid claim of responsibility, accompanied by video footage, fits this pattern precisely. Even if the specific details of Iran's claims prove exaggerated, the core message that American stealth jets are not invincible over Iranian skies resonates with audiences in Tehran, across the region, and in capitals from Moscow to Beijing. Israel, which operates its own variant of the F-35, the F-35I Adir, and has been using it in operations against Iran under the parallel Operation Roaring Lion, has a direct stake in the assessment. The Israeli Air Force shot down an Iranian Yak-130 fighter jet on March 4th using an F-35I, reinforcing the jet's air superiority credentials. But any vulnerability exposed in the platform affects Israeli operational planning as well. Defense analysts, including Tyler Rogoway of the War Zone, have consistently warned that declarations of air supremacy over Iran were premature and that the real threat lies not in fixed air defense batteries, which are relatively easy to locate and destroy, but in road-mobile systems that can hide and redeploy unpredictably. Iran has also developed air defense systems that use passive infrared sensors rather than radar to target aircraft, a technology that proved effective in Yemen when employed by Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. These systems give air crews almost no warning before impact because they do not emit the radar signatures that defensive systems on the F-35 are designed to detect. For allied Gulf states, many of which are hosting American forces and absorbing Iranian retaliatory strikes, the incident adds a layer of anxiety. If the most advanced fighter jet in the American arsenal can be hit, what does that mean for the air defense umbrella they are relying on? The F-35 incident lands squarely in the middle of a war that has already triggered what economists are calling the worst energy market disruption since the oil shocks of the 1970s. A single F-35A costs approximately $82.5 million for the airframe alone, excluding its engine, which adds another $20 million, according to Lockheed Martin's latest production lot figures. Including weapons systems and support, fully configured aircraft exceed $100 million each. Damage to even one such platform carries significant financial implications beyond the immediate repair. It triggers investigations, potential fleet-wide inspections, and reviews of operational procedures that can ripple through maintenance schedules and sortie rates. But the broader economic context dwarfs any single aircraft's price tag. The war has sent Brent crude oil prices from around $72 per barrel before the conflict to over $106 per barrel by mid-March, according to Al Jazeera, citing market data, an increase of more than 40%. The effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz has trapped roughly 500 oil and gas tankers and 500 container ships on either side of the channel, according to The Guardian. The International Energy Agency responded by announcing the largest coordinated release of emergency oil reserves in its history, drawing from stockpiles of more than 1.2 billion barrels held by its 32 member countries. The Pentagon has already sought $200 billion in additional funding for the war, according to the Associated Press, on top of existing defense allocations. Meanwhile, the arms market is booming. On March 19th, the same day the F-35 was hit, The U.S. State Department approved over $16.46 billion in emergency military sales to the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait, bypassing the usual congressional approval process. The largest single item was $8 billion in air and missile defense sensor radars for Kuwait. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, the conflict's economic fallout extends well beyond energy. Fertilizer supply chains, food imports for Gulf states that depend on imports for over 77% of their rice and 89% of their corn, and even AI data center investments in the Gulf are all being disrupted. The World Economic Forum has warned that the damage could prove structural rather than cyclical, reshaping trade routes and investment decisions for years. The F-35 incident has drawn sharply different interpretations depending on who is doing the analyzing. From the American military perspective, the fact that the aircraft survived and the pilot landed safely can be framed as a testament to the jet's resilience rather than a failure of its stealth. According to Air and Space Forces magazine, defense analysts noted that what is remarkable about the current campaign is not that an F-35 was eventually hit, but that combat losses to date have been extraordinarily low given the scale and intensity of the operations. High-end combat against a capable integrated air defense system, these analysts argue, has historically entailed significant aircraft losses, a reality that the U.S. military appears to have largely avoided thus far. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, acknowledged on March 19 that Iran retained some missile capabilities, even as he insisted the U.S. military remained on track to achieve its objectives and was striking deeper into Iranian territory every day. Analysts at defense-focused outlets like The War Zone have offered a more cautionary assessment. Tyler Rogaway warned as early as March 5 that moving to a direct attack campaign, which brings aircraft closer to potential threats rather than relying on standoff weapons launched from outside Iranian airspace, carries inherent risks. Road-mobile surface-to-air missile systems, he noted, can appear anywhere and give aircrews very little time to react. Electro-optical and infrared guided systems are particularly dangerous because fourth-generation aircraft would have no warning they were being attacked, and even stealth platforms like the F-35, while better equipped with sensor suites, face reduced reaction time against passive systems that emit no detectable radar signal. According to analysts at Defense Security Asia, the fact that Iranian forces chose to engage a fifth-generation aircraft indicates that Tehran's command and control structures, radar coverage, and at least some missile batteries have not been fully neutralized despite weeks of sustained bombardment. This assessment carries implications for the tempo of the entire air campaign. If the U.S. military concludes that Iranian mobile air defenses remain a credible threat, it may need to reassess sortie patterns, penetration routes, and the balance between direct attack missions and standoff strikes, a shift that could slow the campaign's operational pace. Analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies have separately noted that while the initial phase of the war focused on decapitating Iranian leadership and degrading fixed military infrastructure, the campaign has since evolved into a protracted effort against dispersed mobile targets that are far harder to eliminate. The F-35 incident may accelerate this shift from what some analysts describe as the easy phase of the war into its more grinding, attritional middle period. From Tehran's perspective, according to regional correspondents, the incident is being framed domestically as proof that the Islamic Republic can still fight back, even under devastating pressure. Whether or not the IRGC's specific claims about the weapon system used hold up under scrutiny, the propaganda value of hitting the world's most advanced stealth fighter is enormous, and it is being deployed to shore up domestic morale at a moment when the regime is under existential military pressure. The reverberations of this single incident extend across multiple regions and dimensions. For the 19 allied nations that operate or have ordered the F-35, any confirmed vulnerability raises immediate questions about procurement strategies, operational doctrine, and threat assessments. Countries like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and several NATO members have made the F-35 the centerpiece of their future air combat capabilities. A hit does not invalidate the platform, but it shifts the conversation from whether the aircraft can survive contested environments to how much risk operators should accept when deploying it against layered defenses that include passive sensor systems. In the wider Middle East, the incident feeds into a narrative that Iran, despite its enormous military disadvantage, retains the ability to impose costs on the most powerful military in the world. This matters not only for morale within Iran's remaining military structures, but for the calculus of proxy groups like Hezbollah, which according to Israeli Defense Forces reporting has already opened a northern front by firing missiles from Lebanon. It also matters for Gulf states calculating how much to invest in their own air defense networks versus how much to rely on the American security umbrella. For Russia and China, the incident provides data points of real strategic value. Both countries are developing their own fifth-generation fighter programs and their own advanced surface-to-air missile systems. Any confirmed capability of a ground-based system to hit an F-35, even a damaged or degraded one, is information that feeds directly into their own military planning. Russia, which has maintained a partnership with Iran despite offering minimal direct military support during the current conflict, may see the incident as validating its approach of selling air defense technology as an asymmetric tool against Western air power. The global economic impact, already severe, is also shaped by events like this. According to Capital Economics, as reported by Al Jazeera, if the war ends within weeks, the macroeconomic impact outside the Gulf will be limited. But if it drags on for months, a scenario made more plausible if Iranian defenses prove more resilient than anticipated, the consequences grow substantially. The consultancy projected that Eurozone growth could slow to just 0.5%, and Chinese growth could fall below 3% in the second half of 2026. Several indicators will signal whether this incident becomes a footnote or a turning point. First, the results of the U.S. military investigation. If the damage is confirmed to have been caused by an Iranian air defense system, and particularly if it was a passive sensor or mobile system, it will force a significant reassessment of the threat environment and potentially a shift in operational patterns. Watch for changes in sortie rates, the balance between manned and unmanned platforms, and any increased use of standoff weapons versus direct attack missions. Second, the Pentagon's upcoming supplemental funding request. The reported demand for $200 billion in additional war funding must pass through a Congress that has not formally authorized this conflict. The F-35 incident could become ammunition for both supporters, who will argue it proves the need for more resources, and critics, who will question the campaign's strategic logic. Third, the behavior of oil markets and the Strait of Hormuz. The international coalition announced on March 19th, comprising the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Japan, pledging to support safe passage through the strait, signals that the economic pressure is reaching a threshold where major powers feel compelled to act. Whether this materializes into actual naval escorts or remains a diplomatic statement will be decisive for energy markets. Fourth, the trajectory of Iran's remaining air defense capabilities. If the IRGC's claim is validated and its forces can continue to credibly threaten American aircraft, the conflict's timeline could extend considerably, with cascading consequences for the global economy, regional stability, and the political sustainability of the campaign in Washington. On a concrete runway somewhere in the Middle East, a battered F-35 sits under armed guard, its damage being cataloged by engineers who understand that every scratch tells a story. The story this aircraft tells is not about a single lucky shot or a single failed system. It is about the enduring gap between the promises of technological supremacy and the messy, unpredictable reality of war. No stealth coding, however advanced, can make a government's claims invisible to scrutiny. No sensor fusion system can resolve the contradiction between declaring an enemy's defenses flattened and having your most advanced jet limp home with damage from those same defenses. 3 weeks into a conflict that has already killed thousands, displaced hundreds of thousands, sent oil prices past $100 a barrel, and drawn an entire region into its orbit, this damaged aircraft is a reminder that wars rarely follow the scripts written for them, and that the costs, human and material, always exceed the projections.